Well, I am proud to be a part of Citizen Church, and are you guys proud of our leadership? Pastor Dustin, doing an amazing job. Well, hey, welcome. Glad you're here, and all of you that are watching online right now, it is great for you to join in with us. Good to have you. And so today I do want to bring a message to you that I hope you find that is inspiring. One of the things that I'm finding, and I'm sure you are as well, that in talking to people, there are a lot of people that are struggling through all of this pandemic. And people that are losing their way, they're losing their dream, they're losing their hope. And we need to rally in a way that we never have to really embrace people around us and to be very aware how people are hurting and how people are suffering. This morning I want to talk to you about what I've entitled Joseph the Dreamer. I want to talk about dreams for the next few moments. When I was 12 years old, I experienced something that I haven't experienced anything like it since, is when we all as a family gathered around a little black and white television in our home. And as we gathered around and we were watching, glued to the screen, no one was talking, and there was a moment that it felt like everyone stopped breathing. And it's when we watched live the first man to step on the moon. I remember going outside a little later, full moon, gazing up at the moon and realizing there was a man walking on the moon right now. I think that was the first time as a 12-year-old boy that I realized that dreams can come true. In 1969, what they accomplished was a technological impossibility because the iPhone that you hold in your hand holds more advanced technology than the Apollo spacecraft did. They were able to accomplish it because a few years earlier in Rice Stadium, the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, stood before a great crowd of people, and that day he declared, "We will put a man on the moon and bring him back safely before the end of the decade." What he did that day, he set the course of a vision and he put a time limit on it, and we accomplished the impossible. It was in the early 1900s that Americans had become obsessed with taking flight, believing that somehow that man could actually learn to fly, and Samuel Langley was leading the way. He was leading the charge on a flying machine, and he held a seat at Harvard University. He worked at the Smithsonian. He was funded by the government. He was surrounded by the greatest minds in the world. And as he worked on that project, here you find that just a few miles away from there, it was the Wright brothers in Dayton, Ohio, working in a little bicycle shop. They had no college education, not funded by anyone, but every day after work, they would load their old truck up with extra parts, going out to the test site, which was nothing more than a cornfield. And there they worked, and day after day, failure after failure. And then on December the 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight for the very first time. And when they did, no one was there to capture it. No one was there to see it. My question is, how could the Wright brothers, how could they accomplish and achieve something that others who were more funded, more educated, how could they overcome that and do what they did? And I think the only way and the only word that describes that was that they were driven by a higher level of passion. I want to turn to the Bible and turn to Genesis chapter 37. And in this chapter, it's the story of Joseph, and it's a long story, and it goes for many, many chapters. But here you find that Jacob is the son. He has 12 sons, and Joseph is the youngest son. Scripture tells us that Jacob loved him more than all the other brothers. How many of you know that's poor parenting? That'll get you into a lot of trouble. But he loved him more than all the others. And then to just kind of throw fuel on the fire, he gave him this magnificent gift. It was a coat of many colors. You know, all the other brothers, they had an outer garment. They were plain. They were knee length. They were just kind of an off-color, garment. And they were just merely functional. In contrast to what his dad gave Joseph, it was this beautiful coat, an array of rich colors. It was ankle length. It was extremely expensive. And what he gave Joseph was what royalty wore. When Joseph put that coat on as a 17-year-old boy, and he walked outside, He felt like royalty. He looked like royalty, and it even caused him to walk like royalty. How many of you know that when your Father wraps you in favor, that you can't help but celebrate and others can't help but notice? As we continue on, I wanted to start this morning by sharing 3 things when it comes to a vision. 3 things that will help your vision become a reality. The first thing is identity. You have to identify who the dream comes from, what your dream is all about. In Genesis 37:5, and Joseph had a dream, and he identified that as a God-given dream. The dream, remember, it was standing out in a field, and he was in a wheat field when all of the wheat began to bend over, and it all laid over on the ground, and Joseph understood what God was saying to him, that I'm giving you authority over the harvest, that one day you will be in a position of authority, and even the harvest will obey your words. The reason God gave him this was because years later he would save 1 million lives from starvation. Do you realize that God gives us the same vision, every born-again believer? And what that vision is it to spare people and to save people from spiritual starvation. I want to ask you this morning, what is your dream? Have you ever really clarified what your dream in life really is? What is the passion and what is the thing that drives you more than anything else? But what is important to understand is that every God-given dream must be attached to God's harvest in some way. So again, let me ask you, what are you dreaming about? Is your dream that you want a college education? Do you want to be a business owner? Maybe you want to be a mom or a dad, a musician, an author, a millionaire, whatever your dream is. Do you find yourself praying over those things and saying, God, bless me, help me, help me. God, help me achieve. God, help me to become a millionaire. But you've got to ask the question, why are you praying over your dream? Because God only blesses dreams and anoints dreams that are tied to His purposes. When we understand that, it changes our mentality. And we begin to look at our dream differently. And we begin to pray differently, saying, God, help me to be a business owner. Help me to succeed in business that I might be able to fund ministry. God, give me children where we've been barren, unable to have children. But God, help us to have children that we may raise children that will influence the world. God, help me to become a millionaire. God, help me, bless me, guide me, help me to accomplish it, that I might plant churches around the world. And here you find in the story of Joseph and his dream, and God whispered a dream in the ear of Joseph. What is God whispering in your ear? What is the dream? Can you identify the whisper of God? You know what is fascinating to me is how that we're able to detect the voice of the devil far more readily than we are able to hear the voice of God. Kind of strange. Because how often do we find ourselves or others saying, you know, the devil is relentless, the devil's on my back, he's just always coming at me with temptation, and we identify that voice when it seems that the voice of God is completely silent. But how often have you been driving around in a car by yourself, and all of a sudden, there are challenging thoughts that begin to flood your mind? How to be a better spouse, a better parent, a better neighbor, or creative thoughts. Driving around by yourself, and all of a sudden, all of these thoughts and ideas and plans begin to roll, and what that is, it's the whispering of God. You can identify the devil's voice by temptation. You can identify the voice of God by inspiration, that God inspires and speaks constantly. In Genesis 37:5, and Joseph had a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. Brings me to the second point about dreams, that it takes perseverance. perseverance, even through the hard times. You see, his brothers hated him all the more. Do you realize that when you begin to speak your dream, that not everyone is going to be happy about your dream? That when you decide as an individual to break out of status quo, not be like everybody else, breaking out of the prison of average, breaking out of poverty mentality, breaking out of that I don't care attitude like everyone else, they will come against you and they will do everything they can to pull you back down to their level. They're not going to stand around and applaud you and the dreams of success in your life. Gordon McKenzie worked for Hallmark Cards for years. He was labeled as a creative genius, and he created so many things for them, but after he retired, his favorite thing to do in life was to speak at public schools. He seemed to zero in on the elementary age, and he loved going into first graders' class. And there he would stand before them, and he would say, "How many of you are artists in the room?" And he said every time, every school, every child would shoot up their hand, everyone in the class was an artist. He'd ask that same question to the second graders, the third graders. By the time he got to the fifth graders, he would ask the question, and now there would be a hand or two that would halfway go up, looking around, afraid of what others might say, very reluctant. Gordon said, "It's so sad for me to stand before 8, 9, and 10-year-olds that have already been robbed of their creativity, their dreams, and their possibilities, all because of the fear of what others might think and what others might say." You see, every day is a pivotal moment in our lives. Today is a valuable moment of realizing that we must hone the dream that God has given to us. Because today is a pivotal moment. We can either blossom in God's creative power, or we can shrink and cower in self-defeat. In Genesis 37:18, "And when they saw him afar off, they conspired against him and said, 'Here comes the dreamer.'" What I find fascinating about how this is worded is that these are his brothers, and they don't even call him by his name, but they call him the dreamer, by the dream that he has. You see, there will be people in life that'll forget your name, but they'll never forget your dream because it's driven by passion, and they'll remember it forever. It was a few years ago, Tom Brady, the quarterback of the New England Patriots, who's been traded, and I'm sure they are very, very sad that they traded him at this point. But Tom Brady was playing in a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and it was the worst first half I have ever watched in football. The Patriots fell so far behind, it was impossible for them to catch up at halftime. When they went to the locker rooms, I was listening to the halftime show and the sports announcers, and they were saying, by our statistics, it's a 98% chance that they're going to lose this game. It is impossible for them to come back and win. They're so far behind. It was after halftime, two teams came back out on the field. There was a close-up shot of Tom Brady standing on the sidelines, and when I saw his face, it was this look of confidence. It was like a fire was in his eyes. He wasn't beaten. He wasn't discouraged. And he went out on the field, and he brought his team back to win the Super Bowl, one of the greatest games I've ever watched in my life. Whenever you watch something like that, you wonder, what is the passion and the drive behind that? Tom Brady posted something a couple of days after he had won the Super Bowl. He said, "Today I came across my old Combine t-shirt from 17 years ago. That t-shirt was the one that he wore when he was going into the NFL and they were assessing his abilities. And then he posted what they said about him as he was getting ready to enter into the National Football League. Here's his assessment. Tom Brady has a poor physical build, lacks strength, lacks mobility to avoid the rush, lacks a strong throwing arm, and cannot throw a tight spiral. Their assessment of Tom Brady was he is lacking and he doesn't measure up as an NFL football player. Then Tom said this after that. He said, when others assess you, you can prove them right or you can prove them wrong. It's all up to you. You see, there are people that will try to assess you. There are people that will have all kinds of opinions about you. There will be those that will attach names to you, but you can prove them right or you can prove them wrong. And the reason why is because there is a God who is placing something in you of greatness. You see, God places at your creation, when He formed you, a dream nature. It's the reason why we find ourselves during the day drifting off and we're daydreaming. It's why we dream all throughout the night, is because nothing ever is accomplished in life without it first being a dream. If you're sitting here today and you don't have a dream, then you don't know where you're headed, and you'll never find the greatness that God has for you, because you have to listen to the whispering of God and God giving you the dream and the passion in your life. The third step of a dream is perspective. You've got to have the right perspective. In Genesis 37 and 20, it says, but they said, we should kill him and tell Father that a wild beast has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dream. They were going to kill him because they hated the dream so badly. They hated his dream because they had no dream. He was going somewhere in life, and they felt like they were going nowhere in life. And when you read this passage, you find that it reveals two things when it comes to our enemy, the devil. Your enemy is smart enough to know that the God-given dream in you can come about. But our enemy is dumb enough to believe that he can stop it. For what God has put in motion, there is nothing on earth that can stop what God has placed inside of you. As we go on in Genesis 37 and 24, and they took him and threw him into the cistern, and the cistern was empty, and there was no water in it. It was a dry well, a deep hole. And they took Joseph, and they threw him into the hole that resembled a grave. As he laid there at the bottom of the hole, he could hear the whispering of his brothers and how they were going to take his life. Joseph finds himself in a very dark place, wondering, is this where it all ends? Is this how it ends? You know, the dark place. The dark place that many of us find ourselves in at times. The dark place that during this pandemic has pushed some people into the darkness, where there seems like there's no hope, where there's no life, where life is no longer worth living. And here we find ourselves in a dark place. This is what's so dangerous about allowing ourselves to slip into a place like that, is because the darkness will cause us to shift to a self-destructive nature. That what we do is we start self-talking, talking to ourselves. And because we're so disappointed where we are in life and what we've accomplished, that we begin to call ourselves names. I'm nothing but a fool. I'm a loser. I'm a failure. I'm an idiot. I'm an embarrassment to all. And it's self-destruction. It's never what God intended for us. You see, all of us will walk through darkness. All of us will find a place like the deep hole, the darkness where it seems like there's no help, there's no hope. There's a story that I remember when it unfolded that has haunted me for years. Kathy Ornsby, who was attending North Carolina State University, she was on the track team and she held the world record for the 10,000 meter race. She was getting ready to run in one of the most important races of her life, the NCAA championship. Everyone was talking about Kathy. Everyone said she was going to win this easily. She might even break her own world record. It was an important race. When she showed up and walked out on the track, she was a nervous wreck. The pressure that was on her, every eye was on her, and she was stiff and she was tight and she couldn't get loose. The gun sounded and they all took off, and she got a bad start in the race. As they came across the finish line, she wasn't first, she wasn't second, but she ended up coming in 5th place. The most important race of her life, and she ran the worst race of her life. She came across the finish line. She saw all of the media coming her direction, wanting an interview, wanting a statement, wanting to know what happened to you, and tears were streaming down her face, and she could not face the crowd, and she just veered off and kept on running, and she ran until she ran completely out of the stadium, and she didn't stop, and she just kept running. She kept running down the sidewalk, and she just kept running until she came to the outskirts of the city. She ran up on an overpass, a bridge, and there she leaped off the bridge to end her life. She didn't die, but she would never walk again in her life, paralyzed. The reason why this happened was because she viewed failure as the end. What I want to ask today is, what is failure to you? Is failure a friend or is it a foe? Is failure your friend or is it your enemy? Because when you have a heavenly perspective, when you keep everything right, failure, listen to this, failure is nothing more than the precursor of phenomenal. It's the precursor of phenomenal. How many times have we seen a sensational singer on stage, under the lights, singing in the most beautiful voice you have ever heard, and you're starstruck by them, amazed by them, and yet you see that, but what you don't see is the years and the years and the years of practice and the years and the years of sour notes. When you see an accomplished public speaker who's able to mesmerize a crowd of people, and you wonder, wow, how did they ever hone their skill at that level? And you're amazed at the way they use words. But what you don't see is the years of them fighting through stage fright and stumbling and stammering over words. The all-time home run king, what people forget is the tremendous amount of strikeouts it took to arrive there. Failure is not your enemy. Failure is your friend. Failure is the stepping stones to phenomenal. And it's all in your perspective and how you view it. There's a verse of Scripture found in Mark 11 and 24. It says, whatever you ask in prayer. You could change that wording, whatever your dream is, ask in prayer. Believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. You can read that one verse in 3 seconds. Ask and receive. But there's a gap between those two words. And that gap might be weeks. That gap might be months. That gap could be years of where between asking and receiving, God said, you ask and you will receive. But it's all about the gap. It's all about the middle. Because in the middle of asking and receiving, there can be a lot of failures and disappointments and feelings of hopelessness. There can be a lot of mountain peaks. There can be a lot of valleys. But you've got to have in the gap a heavenly perspective. That this is nothing more, even in the bad times, even in the dark times. This is nothing more than my journey to phenomenal. You see, it's just my journey. It's just my path. Do you remember the story of Abraham? Where God called Abraham to move and to leave the land of Ur, to go to the land of Canaan. And God was calling him there to become the nation of Israel. Well, I want to back up, rewind for a moment, go back a couple of chapters. And here you find Abraham's father. His name is Terah. Terah had 3 sons, Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Haran, the youngest, was tragically killed. And Terah mourned horribly over his death. A young boy, it was his youngest, and he just couldn't get over the grief. Here in this story, we find that he's called to leave the land of Ur, to go to the land of Canaan. On his journey, he gets halfway through, and he comes to this little small village, a little small town, and the town's name is Haran, the same name of his dead son. And he stops there, and he's reminded of his son, reminded of the grief. And there he stays, and he grieves. And then the next scripture we read about Terah is this: he settled in Haran, and he died in Haran. Then the next chapter, Abraham living in the land of Ur, he hears the whisper of God, leave everything behind and go to the land of Canaan. Abraham makes the full journey, and he becomes the father of all nations and blessed by the hand of God. My question is this: was Terah called to be the father of all nations, the father of Israel, and yet he got stuck in the gap, in the middle? He got caught up in the pain, the grief, and the past of life, and he never fulfilled the calling that God had on his life. You see, all of us, we have the ability to climb into a dark hole and die. Or we also have the ability to climb out of a dark hole and live. It was Winston Churchill who made this statement. He said, when you find yourself walking through hell, just keep on walking. When death overshadows the dream that God has given to you, just keep on walking. You know, there are 3 stages of a dream. Always remember this, of a God-given dream. There will be the birth, and there will be a death, and there will be a resurrection. Why does there have to be a death in a God-given dream? And the reason why is because it must die to human origin, human strength, and human abilities. The death of a dream is the resurrection. You know, I've told bits and parts of this story before, but when we were over in our other building here as a church, much smaller building, years and years ago, that I felt God whispering in my ear to start planning to relocate, finding a larger place to grow in where we could do larger ministry. So I started vision casting, planning, raising money, motivating people for year after year after year, planning to move and planning to advance and doing everything in our power. But what eventually happened over all of these years, building costs continued to soar, and we were no longer just $1 million short. We were now millions and millions of dollars short. After 5 years of working on this, every single day trying to make the vision happen, I was sitting in my office one day and realizing this is an impossibility. We're so short financially that this is absolutely out of our range. And it was one of the lowest days of my life. As I sat there, I pulled out a piece of paper and I wrote God a letter. Have you ever written God a letter? Well, I did that day. And as I scribbled it out, I still have the original letter. And what I did was I scribbled it out, and then I sealed it in an envelope, and I put it in the top drawer of my desk and shut it. And I said, I will not read that letter again until I'm standing in the miracle that God has provided. It was several years later that we were moving into this facility. And on that Friday night, before the weekend of our grand opening, we had 200 of you here, and we were cleaning and getting everything ready for opening day, and it was Easter weekend. When everyone had left that Friday night, been a long day, no one else was in the building, locked the front doors, and as I was walking back through the atrium, I stood and I looked around, and I was standing in the impossibility. I brought this letter with me. It had never been opened in all of those years. I broke open the seal, pulled out this letter, and I want to read it to you. I titled it, "My Great Hope in You, God." Today, August 15th, 2008, is a day of deep discouragement for me. The dream of relocating seems to have come to an end. The economy has crashed, building is completely stopped. No one is loaning money. There's no answers, there's no solutions. All I know is what the Word of God says. In Ephesians 3:20, God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works within us. God says in this verse, whatever I can imagine, He can outdo. Everything about this project seems impossible. Every builder, every architect, every realtor says it cannot be done on your budget. The dream is now out of reach of my own human abilities, and fear wants to overcome me. But I have not been created to fear the unknown. God is able. God stopped the sun for Joshua. God parted the Red Sea for Moses. God shut the mouths of the lions for Daniel, and He can perform this miracle for us. Today I declare by faith this will happen. The next time I read this letter, I will be standing in the miracle that I have dreamed of and will stand amazed at how He has done it. What I do not see today, I will see. The impossible. You know, some of you may be sitting here today and your dream has vanished. There's no dream. You find yourself in a dark hole today. You find yourself discouraged, faithless, questioning God. I want to encourage you today to go home, sit down, write God a letter, seal it up, date it, place it somewhere, and realize I'm in the gap between asking and receiving. If you will persevere in the gap, what you desire, what you want, will take place. It's a promise of God. I want you to bow your heads. I want to pray with you today. With every head bowed and every eye closed, let me ask you this question. How many have come in here today and you feel like you've lost your dream? You feel like it's just not even alive anymore. You're discouraged. When I talk about the dark hole, you feel like that's where I'm at. If you're here today, just slip up your hand real quick and you can put it right back down again, because I want to pray for you. You know, there's a lot of hands going up in this room. This is the reason why that I wanted to speak on this topic today, because I want to encourage you. Your deep and black hole, that dark place, is nothing more than part of your journey to success. Father, today, as we pray, God, I ask that in the name of Jesus Christ, and Lord, that you would lay your hand upon every person in this building. God, that you would strengthen us, guide us, whisper in our ear. Lord, realizing that where I'm headed, my passion, my dream, my desire, that God, I'm going to attach it to your purpose. I'm asking, and I'm ready to receive. Lord, I'm asking for every person who raised a hand today, Lord, would you put a hand of protection, of power, of authority upon them? Lord, I'm asking, would you let them sense your presence in this room right now, that you've got everything in control. God, I pray, give them confidence of that, knowing that if they'll stay persistent, just keep moving through the gap, that God, they're going to receive and the dream will be fulfilled. God, we thank you for your goodness. God, be with us. Be with those that are around us. God, help us to be great influences of those that are in desperate need of you today. And Lord, we thank you for that. And in Jesus' name, amen.